Good morning and welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam here with our first video game review on this podcast for our 5th episode. And we're here to talk about Palworld, which is good. We wanted a nice non-controversial one to start the year out. Palworld, you may know, Pokemon with guns. We've been seeing it forever. And there are a lot of allegations around this game. Let's just start out real quick with the game itself, then we'll get into some of the controversy, and we'll talk about it from there. So, the game is kind of done as like Pokemon with guns, is how it's being marketed, and it's kind of, people are acting like, oh, it's another Pokemon clone, like Yokai Watch, or like, I guess to an extent, the what's it called, the what was that other game, the World of Final Fantasy. That's an inaccurate way to portray it, I think. I don't think this game is necessarily any of that. I think this is more of a, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like a Pokemon, like, it's more like, what was that other game? That was kind of similar. Arc. Where it's like a survival kind of creature tamer, kind of ish. It's got similar mechanics to Pokemon where you have to get Pokeballs or something similar, use it to catch the pals, you can use them to fight. It's not turn-based combat, you kind of just send them out and they do their thing to fight on your behalf. And they level up, same as Pokemon. You can use them at your base to build up your base and farm and get wood and stuff like that so you can catch more. So it's kind of interesting in that way, where it is different. It's not a straight Pokemon clone. And I think that if you're someone who enjoys that kind of game, you will find enjoyment in this. I don't. And that's not me saying the game is bad. I don't like saying a game is bad because I don't enjoy it. It's like Lies of P was great. I don't like Souls-likes. Not my kind of thing. So I can't sit here and say like, oh, this game is terrible. No, it's just I don't like this kind of game, but the game is good. Like I can tell a good game. The game itself works well, and if someone enjoys this style of game, they will enjoy this game. That said, I don't enjoy this type of game. I'm not going to play it too much more. It does annoy the kind of like I'm not a fan of these crafting and all of that. Like, I have games that I will go to scratch that itch, and adding another one in that's kind of, just a little different is not it for me. Now, like, there are some things that I did encounter. I played it on PC. I did encounter some issues with the controller not working properly. And I think that the thing is, too, it's like, it tries to auto-map, but it's not 100%, and a lot of times, sometimes the buttons don't work. I encountered issues where the game would glitch and stop running the controller while I was trying to do things. So if you're trying to crouch to sneak up while holding the ball to throw it at someone, you could run into an issue where the controller desyncs and then resyncs and then it just launches on its own. That happened quite a few times. And then there's an issue where it's like, I don't know if this is a thing of the genre, but if I craft something, just add it directly to if I'm manually crafting, add it directly to my inventory. It could be the game doesn't have the infrastructure to handle both the pals crafting on your behalf and then you going over to the crafting table and grabbing it, and also you crafting it manually. But if I'm manually crafting it, like I am going to the crafting table and crafting the ball, add it directly to my inventory. Don't make me back out and then go back in to grab it, because it's happened a few times where it's like it didn't click with me for whatever reason, and I ended up going out into the wild, getting into a confrontation with something, realizing I don't have the requisite item, and being like, oh fuck, and then I gotta go back and re-get it. I'm not, like, that wasn't something that I particularly cared for in this game, but that could be fixed in the future, if they decide to fix that. I don't know if they're going to or not. So look, I mean, it's the kind of thing where it's like, if you appreciate this kind of game, I think you'll like it. It is an early access title, so the game is still in development, and there will be things added to it in the future. Now let's talk about some of the other issues that have plagued this, that we can't really not address. The plagiarism allegations, the generative AI allegations. I think that I've seen some of the videos comparing like the direct comparisons between some of the pals and Pokemon. And look, there are ones that you can be like, look, I see this is clearly inspired. I see this one's clearly inspired by Latios. This one's clearly inspired by Electabuzz. This one's clearly inspired by Galarian Meowth. I get all of that. There are some things that kind of are red flaggy, where there are some Pokemon that are kind of very close proportionally to the models from Scarlet and Violet, especially the data mined ones from Scarlet and Violet. And that is a little bit of a red flag, where it is a little weird that that's the case. If it's not plagiarism, it's pretty damn close to just tracing the character model. And there is the line of what constitutes inspired by versus what constitutes just direct copying. And this game is towing that line, if not crossing that line at times. And if that's the case, what is there for us to do? What is there for us as players to do? And I think the issue becomes, I don't know if they traced or anything like that. I do know that if it is the case, people shouldn't be sending death threats one way or the other to the studio. And the developers who made it. I understand, like, that is clear as day. You shouldn't be doing that. It's a little too close for comfort until they can provide, and there really isn't a way to prove it. What my sense is that this has not come out of the blue. This is not a Steam Next Fest game that was like on page 3 if you scroll through Steam Next Fest, which I do every time, and I always look through what the games are that are coming out, and I like to look to see what's there and available. This was not a game there. This was a major release. This partnered with Xbox Game Pass. This was something that was in a developer direct, or I think it was in a Sony direct at one point, or a Sony showcase, and it was definitely an Xbox One. And my issue with this is Nintendo and the Pokemon Company are very litigious when it comes to their intellectual property. If there was a case, and this Pokemon with Guns game was coming, if they had even the smallest case up until this point, I feel like they would have taken it. That said, it's worth noting the Monster Hunter genre is not something that's trademarked by the Pokemon Company. And I do also understand that, yes, that we do need competition for Pokemon. And we've talked about this before with, like, Scarlet and Violet. And I think it's somewhere in my lengthy review that I have of all the Scarlet and Violet stuff, where there is this case where Pokemon is kind of in a weird place, where it doesn't necessarily have to evolve, no pun intended, as much, or maintain a standard that other games would have to, because there isn't any competition in the marketplace. The same goes for, like, Call of Duty, where it's like, Call of Duty is the only game in town for this kind of realistic shooter. They don't have a ton to worry about if there is no competition. And it's the same thing with Pokemon. Pokemon doesn't have a viable alternative. There is no, like, World of Final Fantasy is great, but there is no online scene for it. There is no other game you can get. I mean, there are other games like it that have come out. There's Cassette Beasts we talked about. We talked about Koromon. We talked about, there's a third one, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But these games are kind of Pokemon-like. And they play very well. Like, I loved Koromon 2 years ago. Fantastic. I loved Cassette Beasts last year. But this is the first one that's coming along that is using the kind of Pokemon general idea to the level that that is this open. That is this kind of like in your face about it. And I get it. Like, that's kind of what's putting this here. And for the fact that the first one to do this is this one that so liberally pulls from existing Pokemon without really too much, like, oh, I know what's going, like, without that much, originality to it, it is kind of a weird situation to be in. Like I said, I'm not overly thrilled with what Pokemon's done recently, and I think that there does need to be competition for Pokemon in the marketplace. I would have liked the competition to come around and get this lightning in a bottle to have been Koromon, to have been Cassette Beast, which was also an Xbox Game Pass title. It's definitely on PC Game Pass, so that's how I played it. I think it was also on on what's it called on console. Like, that's the issue here, is that there hasn't been something to point to and be like, see, look, here's a viable contender for something else that you can do that's going to do the same thing to force Nintendo to change. And I think part of the issue here is this one is just, it feels like a game that is shovelware on Steam that is like, okay, so we're mashing together the biggest strengths. People love Pokemon, people love these survival games like this. Mash them together. Here we go, and that's what I think what a lot of the problem is. On top of the and why these plagiarism allegations are coming like so like much to this game. Besides the fact that it appears to have plagiarized, there's just this question of what's the line between plagiarism and inspiration. Because some of them it's just inspiration. Like, there are a few that are close. Like, there's a Lycanroc one that's very similar. There's one that has basically the exact same face as Galarian Meow. There's one that appears to rip off Cinderace very closely. And the suspicion that this game came out this far after Scarlet and Violet ended up coming out and then having all the files available for anyone is another thing that's a little sus about this whole situation. So that's kind of where I stand on this. Whereas, like, let's see how it plays out. Let's see if the company that makes it can respond to the allegations in a meaningful way, and let's see how they kind of handle this, because that'll be the big test of this. I think if there was a case, Nintendo would have brought it before this point. That said, we didn't have a public build of this game until this week. Or this weekend. So they could be building a case. That's the issue. And I think, too, it's like Microsoft almost certainly vetted this. Microsoft almost certainly looked at it and were like, look, we're not going to put this on Game Pass if we think there's a possibility that Nintendo could sue. But I don't know. We will see. So we'll wrap up there for today. Our next game in our quest to review all the Pokemon games will be the Pokemon Trading Card game on Tuesday, then Pokemon Stadium the week after, then Pokemon Pinball the week after that. So until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.